Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Pfeiffer, and I'm the founder and CEO of Supplier Community. And it is a cold and snowy day in Northwest Arkansas. I'm looking out my office window here, and it looks like the snow's coming down pretty good. So it's good to be inside. Hope you all are having a safe and warm week. We are here for Conversations on Retail, and this is a series we kicked off about a month ago, I guess. And the idea behind Conversations on Retail is that there are a lot of folks that I've had interaction with in my career, people that have been absolutely fascinating to me in terms of what they've accomplished. But as I sat back and thought about it, I don't know these people. And I thought, what a great opportunity for me to have a conversation with folks that I've really admired during the course of my career, and give a small audience an opportunity to kind of eavesdrop on that conversation live, and maybe even submit some questions, and then make that conversation available to anyone that might have some interest. So we're here today with Gabe Wight, who's one of the founders and the CEO of Webata, and you're going to hear more about that company. But Gabe, thank you so much for making the time to visit this afternoon. I've really looked forward to this.
Yeah, my pleasure. Me too. It's good to hang out, even if we have a unseen audience. Good to hang out with you. It's always fun to be with you.
You're a guy that I've admired for a very long time, and I think my first exposure to you probably would have been during the Mars Agency days. And we'll talk about that experience. But the reason I've admired you so much has been not so much about what you've accomplished, though you've accomplished a lot, but just your reputation as a business person, your reputation as a human. You're just one of those guys that are really well thought of, just based on the way you've conducted yourself. At least that's been my experience. I wanted to start this conversation with you the way I normally do, which is, let's start all the way at the beginning and talk about your childhood, and what were the things that happened or that you experienced in your childhood that really helped you become the person that you are, the entrepreneur that you are.
Yeah. I think, so let me gather my thoughts on this for just a second. And I should be prepared for that, because I've watched other conversations in retail, and that is where you start. And so it's a very predictable thing. And so I think there are a few different componentries of childhood that still remain very impactful. I grew up in a small town, outside of a small town, about 10 miles out of a small town, on a small farm. And that was really important. So that's one component. I'll maybe spend a second there. Another is just the most wonderful parents. That's an important piece. Faith played a large part of my upbringing. That's an important piece. And I think another one is just work mixed with the ability to be a kid. And so all of that melds together in my early days upbringing. We had space. And so we had on the farm, we started off when I was born, we raised rabbits. We had, my parents they were part of the Back to the Farm movement in the early 70s. And they started off with some cows and chickens, and then sold the chickens off, and we had chicken houses full of rabbits, and so we had rabbits and raised rabbits in these little in these chicken houses. If one got out, as a little bitty guy, I got paid. If they got out of its cage in the chicken house, I got paid a penny if I could catch it, and I was maybe like, this is preschool age.
Yeah, and
it could be a half-day adventure if it was out in the chicken house trying to catch this thing for a penny. But if it got outside the chicken house, just out on the farm, I got paid a nickel. And now if I needed help, but I had to get my sister to help me, we had to split the nickel. She's older. She always got the 3 pennies. I always got the 2 pennies out of it. And I'm not sure if that was fair and equitable, but it worked out. But we worked on the farm and worked hard on the farm. And that was very important to me. We also just had an opportunity to play. If we weren't working, it was just, and it was play in space. And there were, our neighbors, or neighbors that had kids our age, but they may be a mile down the road, and they would come over, or we'd walk there or ride our bikes or what have you. But I remember as a kid, I'd just tell my mom, I'm going that way. And she would say, okay, I'll be home by dark. And I'd just go and explore. And my parents always said, if you get lost, don't worry about it. Just go downhill. You'll eventually find water. Just keep going downhill, go downstream. People live near water, and you'll find somebody eventually, and they'll be able to get you back home. And so that ability to play was really important. We in my early years, as my parents were trying to pay for the farm and make it on the farm, we had very few means. And so something broke, we had to fix it. And we couldn't go to town and get a part. You had to figure out, the old proverbial duct tape and baling wire. That was really important to me, just learning how to fix things, how to make things work. We went to town, typically like, early when I was really young, maybe once or twice a week. And we never missed church. That was always something. And of course, back then the stores weren't open on Sundays. And so we would go like on a Saturday and get all of our groceries and all of that stuff. But it was really important. We were a close family, great parents, very loving, pushed us hard to be able to figure things out and sort things out on our own. And I think all that plays into, from a really young age, what was important. And there was a special time.
So I'll jump to the next question, but I forgot to say this when we got started. I alluded to this, but anyone that's attending live, Zoom obviously has a Q&A function built in. And if you've got questions that you'd like to ask of Gabe during this conversation, go ahead and submit those now, and we'll take them as we go. Gabe, one of the things we talked about the other day as we were preparing for this conversation that we share in common is just we're both so close to our mothers, and our mothers are the ones that really had kind of the sense of adventure that rubbed off on us and give us the courage to go and take risks and do things and try things. Talk about your mom a little bit.
I mean, she will do anything. I think the first word typically when I describe her is loud, and I mean that in the most affectionate way possible. And Matt, I think I mentioned this to you the other day. Anyone on this call, if you just happen to call her and say, you don't have to tell her your name, just say, hey, listen, I've got 2 tickets. I've got an extra ticket. We're going to Bogota, Colombia. We leave in an hour. You want to go? And my mom will be like, yeah, I'm in. And she just does things, and she's got this most wonderful sense of adventure, which I really appreciate. And she has it's an interesting mix between nurturing and exploration and adventure. And sometimes I think those may feel like they are contradictory, but they're not. She does a very nice job of being very loving, very nurturing, but yet, I mean, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, I got her a zip line certificate for her birthday. And you think I mean, she thinks she would have won the lottery. It was, all right, I get to go zip lining. And my dad's just, my dad's a little bit more grounded. And I think just sits back a lot of times and says, what in the world is she thinking? But she will go anywhere and do anything and talk to anyone. She's very engaging. They've been to Israel a few times, and she's never, people always ask, well, aren't you worried about, they've gone during the times when there were a lot of bombings and that sort of thing. And people are like, aren't you worried? She's like, you know what? Yeah, we don't want to die, but I mean, my goodness, so we're not going to let that get in the way of us having a good time. And that's kind of my mom. That's been very influential on me to, number one, just, you never have fun unless you say yes to something. And there's so much joy and just enjoyment in life, and just saying, you know what, I'll go, and I'll go along for it. And then also just that spirit of just taking a chance and saying, you know what's the worst that's going to happen? It can't be that bad. I'm just going to take a chance and just do it. And that's been very impactful for me.
So you grew up with a mother that give you this sense of adventure, this idea of just, go and do things. But you also grew up with a father that encouraged you to experience lots of things, and it kind of created in you, especially during childhood, you had an ability or an experience rather that allowed you to try lots of different things in terms of part-time work. Right. So you could kind of discover who you were and what your real interests were.
Yeah. My mother is, nurturing, sense of adventure. On the other side, my father is just one of the smartest and most wise and steady people. And he's constantly learning. He's never stopped learning, and that continues to be a drive with him today. I saw him with a very real consistency in his faith, and a very real consistency in always learning, a lot of wisdom, and just down to earth, and an easy individual to talk with, no matter who you are or where you're from. And he I realized early on, so there was a lot of work to do on the farm, and I kind of took over the cattle part of the operation when I was old enough to drive, which I think was around 11, 12, somewhere in that range. And you know how that's how you are as a farm kid.
Right.
And I realized pretty quickly I can either work off the farm and make money or work on the farm and not make money. So it probably makes a lot of sense to work off the farm. So I started at a fairly early age hiring out the neighbor farmers and that sort of thing. And as I got to working age, which where we could really get a actual double W-2, 14, I think, or maybe I was 15 by then. And my dad said, you know what, you're gonna get into a career, you're gonna do fine, but you're probably going to be in that career for the duration, and so you might try some things you like. And so change jobs every school year, every summer. And so I had the chance. That was such great advice. And so I worked as a bellhop at a hotel in Eureka Springs. I worked at Walmart for a while, which was a wonderful experience. I sold women's perfume at Dillard's. I ran a bulldozer. I worked at FedEx. I waited tables, just a variety of interests. And I think where it really hit home for me was my freshman year of college. My father, summer was coming up. He said, what are you going to do this summer? And I said, I'm not sure. And he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I would love to learn how to landscape. And he said, well, call around. So I just started calling landscape companies and ended up doing landscaping that summer. And it was just that cadence. And it gave me such a perspective of the individuals you meet in those, I don't know if you want to call them walks of life or jobs or what have you, really helped me through the years. Just having being more well-rounded in not just what work is, but how different businesses, different people think about inputs and outputs and the process in between, and what can break in between, and how do you fix those things. And then I think to a degree, what really is important. It's so easy to get hung up on the little things that aren't important, and seeing that play out in a number of circumstances was really helpful.
So you grew up working hard, playing hard on the farm. You had lots of experiences in terms of part-time jobs. Faith was a big part. Mm-hmm. Talk about your experience at the University of Arkansas, how you ended up there, why you chose it, and kind of what that journey looked like.
Yeah, I chose it, I think, probably because I had a academic full ride scholarship. And so that was handy. And my parents, when I was really, really young, there's two things they would always, as a way to say, you're going to be on your own one day. I think two areas that they kind of brought that to life. One was, when you turn 16, you're going to want a car, and we're not going to give you a penny for it. And number two is, when you leave the house, you're going to college, we're not paying for it. And you know what? They lived up to those words. And so they upheld their end of the bargain. And so full ride scholarship U of A was a really big help. And at the time, I thought I'd go to law school. Those who know me know that I just enjoy a good debate. I love to just pick ideas and things apart and try to understand them. And so I thought law school would be a good option for me. So I started off in political science, and man, I hated it. I did not like it a bit. And so after my first semester, I called home and I was like, Dad, I'm quitting school. And here's the, wisdom and calm and consistency. And he said, well, basically of all the ideas out there, that's one of them. And I told him I'm going to quit school, open a car wash and a gas station, diversify, and a restaurant, diversify. And he's like, no, that's an idea. However, you got this scholarship, so maybe you should just try something else. And it's like, I don't know if I want to try anything else. This political science was terrible. And so I went around just talking really to my friends and a little bit to some of the profs at the U of A, and found out that poultry science had at the time, the fewest number of students, but the most amount of scholarship money. And so if you keep it 275, they'd pay your tuition. But if you already had your tuition paid through scholarship, they just cut you a check. And I thought, there's a car payment. And so I signed up poultry science and loved it. It was great. So I got my undergrad in poultry science and a minor in ag business, and just had a great experience and enjoyed the industry, enjoyed the people. There were so many just interesting intricacies in it. Even like, how do you mix a feed ration? and where do you get the inputs for the different nutrition, all those things, which I've always enjoyed, just how things go together and what makes things work and how do you gain efficiency out of that. And poultry science really fed that for me.
So you finished your undergrad program, then what?
Then I went on to grad school. And kind of an interesting story, since we're getting to know each other a little bit. In grad school, I was, I was working my way through school, and at the end of my undergrad, I wasn't going to go to grad school originally. At the end of undergrad, I was dating this girl. We'd been together for maybe 2 years or so, and wonderful human. And I said, hey, I've got a job offer. I was going to go work for International Paper in selling in their ag division. And but I was going to move, and I said, I'm going to move, and she said, great, I'll go with you. And I was like, oh no, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm quite ready for that. So I thought maybe I should stay here and go to grad school. And so I went to grad school, or I went to a prof. I wanted to go either get an MBA or a master's in ag business. I'd taken quite a few classes out of the business school, and went to the ag business. The head is Dr. Dixon, a wonderful man. And I said, hey, I think I'd like to go to come to grad school. And he said, well, you need to take I don't remember if it's the LSAT, GRE, whatever the test is. And I said, man, Dr. Dixon, I don't really want to. You know me, I can do it. I'm smart enough. And he just kind of dismissed it. And over the few hallway conversations, finally about a week later, he's like, you know what, fine. You don't have to take the test. We know you're capable. We know you're competent, whatever. And I said, great. I said, Dr. Dixon, there's something else. I really don't want to write a thesis. I'm not into that whole writing thing. He's like, you're not into, who cares if you're into writing? And so we had a long conversation where I was made to feel very, very humble. But over the course of a couple of weeks, he's like, you know what, well, we're going to start a new program that you take a couple extra classes, you don't have to write a thesis. And so that worked out. And I said, there really is only one more thing. I have no money. I need you to pay for grad school. And I'll never forget.
No test, no thesis, no money.
Yeah, Mr. White. And I think is how he started that. Anyway, they ended up giving me a grad assistantship, and it was great. And I was a very poor student in terms of effort. Made good grades to keep my scholarships in undergrad, but just effort wasn't didn't put in the effort, and therefore didn't extract what I should have out of undergrad. Grad school, I put in the effort. I became a good student, and I got out of it what I should have. And I think that's, when I look back over life, like some of the things I wish I'd done differently. I thought I was at school to get a degree. That's of course not right. I was supposed to put in the effort to get out of it, and the degree just represents you got the things out of it you should have. And I missed that. I missed that whole point in undergrad. Thankfully, understood it in grad school, and that served me very, very well.
I wonder if it's a generational thing, because I and a lot of my friends kind of went into the university experience believing that we just need to prove to the world that we're capable of finishing something. Right. And it wasn't about what we could learn while we were there. It was a matter of saying, hey, look, we could stick with something for 4 years, right. and endure it. So you finished,
which I think should be like, you should get a gold star for that, but that's probably about it.
Right. So you finished graduate school. Are you interviewing toward the end, or are you being recruited by someone? Where did you go after that?
Yeah, one of the benefits I think of agriculture, maybe today, maybe at the time, is there were plenty of opportunities. We really didn't have a placement issue coming out of school. And so I'd done a couple of internships. I'd interned for Georgia's in Springdale, which was just a great experience. I'd interned for a large ag pharmaceutical company. I thought after grad school, I'm going to go into ag pharmaceutical sales. That seemed to suit me, where there's a little bit of there's a nice income potential, which was important, of course, coming out of school. And if I didn't mention that, I would not be honest with you or anyone else. But then two, there was a lot of what is the right fit. And so that ag pharmaceutical company had this huge warehouse and all of these different products, and to figure out what is the right thing for this particular situation, I thought that sounds like a lot of fun. There's all that level of specificity has always been something that I've been intrigued with, whether it's, how to define words properly, or what is the right thing to do here. And that's played through my career to a large degree. But I was being recruited by a couple of folks. One was that ag pharmaceutical company, and the plan, they had a warehouse in Gainesville, Georgia, and I was going to go work the warehouse for a couple of months, learn the product, all of that, and then go into sales there in Gainesville. Also, Wayne Farms, who at the time was the more technologically advanced yet and profitable poultry companies out there. They were recruiting me into their management training program. So this will date it. Their big claim to fame was, we even give our fieldmen laptops. And it's like, oh, a laptop, where now that's fairly ubiquitous. And anyway, so I was headed down there, and the pharmaceutical company had a plane. They said, we're going to come pick you up on Thursday. We know you're looking at this other thing. Since they're in the same general area, roughly around Gainesville, we'll fly you down. We'll pay for the whole thing for 7 days. All we ask is 3 days. We want 3 days with us. You can take a couple days for yourself. You can take the other 4 days for yourself. We know you're going to visit with them. If you want the whole other 4 days with them, that's fine. They were just so gracious, so gracious. And then we'll fly you back up, but we'll pay for the whole thing. And so I was going to leave on a Thursday, and the Thursday before, I was waiting tables at Rio Bravo Cantina in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and home of the greatest cheese dip ever, greatest queso ever. And Thursday before, an old college friend and her fiance, maybe husband at the time, came in and sat at my table, and we got talking, and her I think they were engaged. Her fiance said, what are you going to do? What's next? And I said, you know what? I'm headed to Georgia next Thursday. And he said, I think you do well in advertising. Have you ever thought about that? Well, no, I had a marketing class. And he said, well, why don't you come talk to us? I worked at this little agency, told me the name. I really couldn't remember it after the shift, but I had his number, and I called him up. I said, hey, I'd come in. So the next Friday morning, that was a Thursday evening, Friday morning, I went in and interviewed with a guy that's still around, David May. And he was ended up being my first boss, and we have still a great relationship.
Yeah, I love
David. No, he's great. He's just one of those awesome people, and a tremendous influence on my life for sure. It has been a great friend. I went in, interviewed, and on Friday, and told him, hey, listen, I'm headed to Georgia. I don't really, but I'd walked in. The agency was Thompson Murray, and the second I walked in, the culture, the atmosphere, I was like, I want to be here. I don't know what they do, but I want to be here. It just felt special. And so on Monday, at the end of the day, Friday, David called me and said, hey, can you come back in on Monday? Let's get this thing wrapped up. And I went in, met with Andy Murray, who's one of the founders and CEO, and had a really nice interview with him. And they offered me the job that afternoon. It was kind of one of those things of, what do you expect to make? I told them, which was probably, I probably didn't know. I probably lowballed. I could have, made a lot more, who knows, but they said, okay, we'll start you there. And started at Thompson Murray. One quick, since David May, I'm looking around to see if I have a prop here for this, but you'll like this story. I asked David, I said, so David, if I, in the interview, how do I learn this business? I'm a farm kid, but I've got my resume. One of my profs had said, when you put your resume together, list every job on there. And it ended up being a 4-page resume, because I had just a line or two from every job.
Yeah.
But I'd done so many things that, and David was like, holy cow, you can figure anything out. And so I asked him, I said, is there some kind of like training manual or, a quick start guide or something on how to do this job? And David had been there for just maybe a couple of months, and he looked around his desk, and he picked up a stack of Post-it notes, and he said, here, write your own.
Wow.
So that was my training manual.
Wow.
I mean, that's David May. So that's how I got started.
For some reason, I didn't realize David had been at Thompson Murray. I got to know Andy and of course Mike very early in my marketing, role at Walmart. Would have been 2000, I guess, maybe 2001, something along those lines. So great folks. Great folks. So tell me about your experience there, and how long did you stay, and who were some of the leaders that influenced you? I'm guessing you had a lot of good memories, working with Andy.
A lot of good memories with Andy. I was there from 2000 until 2011.
Okay.
And I'll tell you that culturally, I look back and I think, how in the world I think Andy specifically have such a clear vision around around being a small company and acting like a well-established, been in business for years. Just the principles he had developed, like here are principles of leadership. Here's our ways of working, and all of those things that as an entrepreneur you don't have time to do, but he did them anyway. And he was a tremendous influence. I still look at him as one of those people that are so frustrating to me, because I think I've got really good and really smart ideas, and I talk to him and his are just better. And it's just like, come on, Andy, let's just give me a bogey and say, one time say, that's actually as good of an idea as possible. Dave May was an incredible influence. I think one of the things I took away from David May is just, it really didn't matter what was happening and how bad the situation looked. He just had this optimism about him. And I hope I've picked some of that up in life, because he was so good at that. Terry Turpin was a very good culture champion, and learned that culture champion from him. Reported to a guy named Charlie Anderson for a while, who Charlie, I've never known anyone who could carry more load on shoulder. Now, he's got broad shoulders anyway. Now maybe that's the secret right there. But I mean, and I count all those as, Charlie, David is just dear friends today, and just, and then there are a group of peers. And I think this is really important in any workplace. There are a group of peers. There are 6 of us, I suppose, that we stuck together really, really close. I've still got a tight relationship with all of them. And we really made a effort to elevate each other's game. And we get together early in the morning. We get together impromptu as well, but for a long time we got together once a week in the morning, as best I remember, and we just talk about the work and how can we get better in the work, and kind of go around the table. I think that's something that in my career has been maybe too rare of peer organized. Let's kind of sort this stuff out together. And if we start with the foundation, if we just want to grow and get better, that was really important to me. And those guys are still all very important to me. That whole Thompson Murray experience was such a special time.
Yeah. So then the decision to leave that team and go to the Mars agency, what drove that decision, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, it was time, I think, is the thing. We'd undergone a CEO change at Thompson Murray had been purchased by Saatchi & Saatchi, became Saatchi & Saatchi X, and what a great ride we had, and have nothing but wonderful memories and experiences there, and then CEO change, and this was 2011. Doesn't seem like it was right after the 2008 recession, but we're still kind of coming out of it as a group. And part of that holding company mentality as the years went on, more and more holding company kind of what's the right way to say it? In my mind, bureaucracy, probably the proper way to say it, is proper processes came into play, and it just became, I felt like for me, that entrepreneurial spirit was so slowly being choked out, and so, or at least in my role was being choked out, and so. It was just time to move on, and had a really good went in and said, "Hey, I'm leaving." And we had kind of developed a not a long term, but over the course of a few weeks, a transition plan, and which was special to me, because the normal thing in agency, especially if you're going to another agency, is let's go ahead and walk out the door and that sort of thing. And but we had a lot of trust between us. And so was able to wrap up the things that I thought were important, that I thought could help, keep them successful, at least as to the degree my one individual role could help keep them successful. And so left there and went to the Mars agency.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm wanting to get to in a fairly short amount of time. So I don't mean to fast forward through the rest of your career, but what I'd like to do is maybe you summarize from the Mars agency to, Webata, and the things that you learned, and the areas where you feel like you failed or where you grew, and the experiences that you're grateful for. Just kind of lay everything pre-Webata out in a summarized form, if you can.
Yeah, sure. Let me get this in about 3 or 4 bullet points here. 3 or 4 paragraphs.
Yeah.
Which, me, my paragraphs are like, that long.
And mine.
My paragraphs are books, not paragraphs. Let's see. So I think it's important. One of the things about the Thompson Murray Saatchi days that Andy was really good at was he didn't just coach you in the work, he coached you in life. And I remember one time I was a new father. And I was asking him, like, Andy, I'm working too. I don't have any time for the kids. He's like, well, tell me what you do when you're with your kids. And he said, you are totally missing the principle of focus.
Hmm.
When you're at work, you focus on work. When you're with your kids, you focus on your kids. And we walk through, what does that really mean? At the time, I think we're all at like palm trios or something, or blackberries, and all that's new. And we don't know how yet to, maybe it's just me. I didn't know how to integrate that in my life. I didn't know when to set things down, when to pick things up, what to think was important. I know how to separate the urgent from important. And that plays in later, because I was at Mars and had just a tremendous experience with Ken Barnett and that team, and we could spend a good 45 minutes to an hour just on how appreciative and how much Ken Barnett and the Mars team, just what they meant in my life. They helped me transition through a really difficult period. So I went I was there for 2 years, I suppose, just under 2 years. And my wife, Robin, at the time, was diagnosed with breast cancer. And to pull back to that, how to focus, it was, I don't think you don't go into these things prepared for just the sheer quantity and weight of doctor's appointments and scheduling. And so she was diagnosed on June 26th. And by the time we get to July like 20th, she's already been through a round of chemo, and just it's all so fast, and it's every day. And at the time I was traveling a lot. And so I had, I'll just tell one quick Ken Barnett story. I called Ken, is like, Ken, I've got to leave. And he said, why? And I said, I've got to get off the road. And he said, well, her whole treatment plan, it's only like 18 months to 2 years, right? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, Gabe, we'll just carry you for 18 months or 2 years and just come back when you come back. I'd been there 2 years, but that was him in a nutshell. And there's story after story after story of him in that regard. But I needed to be able to spend time, and so I left Mars and I took over a local media agency, and which gave me the chance. I really didn't travel anymore. I was able to make the doctor's appointments. The team there was just phenomenal about the flexibility of being able to care for her, and did that until it became apparent that she wasn't going to have a good outcome. And so I left there to stay home and caretake for her final several weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even answer. Obviously you could tell that's a big marker in my life, because I stopped there. And your question is, summarize your career through there. And so left there, ended up afterward taking some time off, ran marketing for a Banded Holdings, which has a few brands, mostly in the waterfowl space. Reconnected with an old Thompson Murray friend, Chuck Browning, who's been a tremendous influence and friend to me over the years, and really learned. I think from Thompson Murray, I learned started off in like display production and print ads and that sort of thing, and then moved into account service, and Walmart was my primary client for a while. And so learned the inner workings of retail and that sort of thing. Then moved over to new business, and then at Mars oversaw new business and a few of the offices there, and GM, and then transitioned. So you kind of get a picture of some of the experiences that are forming. And then left from there, ran New Line, and so had was the CEO at New Line Media Group, and learned those experiences. Then over to Chief Marketing Officer at Banded. And all through this, it's just interesting what's happening. We used to think, I remember early in my career, it's all about displays and how do we create a better pallet display or get more product on a pallet display. All of a sudden, it's moving into PDQs and getting smaller and smaller until all of a sudden it's like zeros and ones and it's all digital. And by the time I get to Banded, so much of our time is focused around social media, e-commerce, owned e-commerce, and how do we grow our retailer e-com, all that stuff. It's just interesting how in such a short amount of time, how much the focus of the world, certainly my world, had changed, even from a very tactical measure.
Yep. So then the journey to Webata, I think the journey's not relevant. Tell us about Webata. Tell us about what Webata is, and the team that you have, and the problems that you're working to solve.
Mm-hmm. Sure, man. I just got a piece of ice in that drink. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. So Webata is we're a Walmart specific merchandising technology company, and so what does that actually mean? We think about shelf position and shelf rank on Walmart.com. Where do you rank? Where does your item rank? What keywords does it rank for? How do we get into more keywords across more subcategories? How do we more keywords, more cross merchandising, and then how do we get better ranks? And so, in a nutshell, that's what we think about, and we've got tools and solutions to help our clients move up in rank, and so get deeper into their category by better rankings, and then also expand out into complementary subcategories and that sort of thing. That's really what we think about. We got a few other services go along, but I think that's in a nutshell, a pretty accurate summation. Your next question was team, and I think the team at Webata. First off, the co-founder Dale Treece, Dale and I worked together back at Saatchi, and I mean some of these old friendships, and they never seem to go away, which is a wonderful part of life. A wonderful part. We had such a productive period of time at Saatchi, and we've stayed connected and worked together at a couple of spots in between, and then came back around at Webata, and we work very, very well together. But we've got really the team that's assembled we're one of the things I like. We're all old like me, and we've all been there a little bit before, and so you don't have to worry, are these things going to get finished? And even like our Rochelle Milam, she's been on Retail Link since it was a software. A lot of people don't know that Retail Link used to go out on a floppy disk, right. And she's, and it's just people who know how to get things done because we've been doing it for a long time. And I think that's created a lot of efficiency, but also just that maturity on the team is something I appreciate every day, because we all know how to act when things don't go quite right, and how to help things get better when they don't go quite right. And we all know that we're all in this together. We're all going to support each other. We're going to support our clients. And if we don't have something that can make someone else successful, then we're not going to have a business. And I think that's something that comes with maturity. A lot of times when you get out in the job market the first time, you think the job is for me. They created this job for me so they could pay me money and I could come here every day and do it. And we all know that's just not the case.
Yeah. I want to come back at the very end and talk about kind of the world as you see it with respect to the business that you're doing, and sure. How changes in consumption and shopping and all these things are really impacting the decisions that you're making and the plans you're developing and so forth. But I do want to make sure we spend a little bit of time at least to talk about this idea of perseverance. And you're a person, whether it's in your entrepreneurial journey or in your personal life. I mean, we're people that have just gone through good times, we've gone through bad times. Yeah. But one thing I've noticed about you, every conversation, you're just a person that just seems to have a lot of joy. And knowing a little bit about some of the things you've been through, a lot of people would say, man, where does that come from? And is it even real? One of the questions that come in from Pam was the same question I asked you, by the way, when we were talking the other day, is what's behind you on that whiteboard. So just talk about perseverance and whatever you want to share, but you do have such an interesting and inspiring story, and love to hear as much of it as you might want to tell.
Yeah. I'm trying to do an assessment real fast to see how much I could tell before I break down. I've had a couple of very significant tragedies in my life. One of which, as I mentioned before, my wife Robin, she passed away in 2015 from breast cancer, and that was it was such a difficult thing, and that almost sounds trite when I say it like that, but it just it's not trite. It was a difficult thing. All of a sudden, I was a single dad with 2 kids without my life partner there beside me, and so just even man, it's so silly. Like, how in the world do you get groceries into the fridge? They were just there. And so, I knew, because I worked in the retail for all these years, I knew functionally that, oh yeah, someone makes a list, goes to the store, buys them, and puts them in the fridge. But I hadn't functioned to that. And so, when do you do it? How do you keep that list? And just how do you plan meals? All that. How do I get the kids to school and to practice and all those things and work? I didn't have a grasp for even the simple logistics of life. much less not having a ping pong part, somebody to bounce things back and forth with any longer. And so that was certainly one. And then behind me on the wall, you asked about that. That's actually the 23rd Psalm. In 2017, my little boy was hit by a car, and he didn't make it. And so when I was going through his stuff afterward, he had a piece of paper with the 23rd Psalm written on it. And my current wife, Pamela, has just been a tremendous blessing to us. She had that when we were dating. She had it blown up, and the paper projected up, and an artist traced that, or whatever they do on the board. So it's got all of his little, all those little misspellings and scratched out letters and all that. And it's a very, very meaningful piece to me. And I think, so those two events, I think one of the dynamics in losing Eli, my son Eli, is I used to be a runner. And if you're going to run a marathon, which I never ran a marathon, so I should just clear that up right now, but whatever distance you're going to run, maybe I should get something I used to run. So if you're going to run 8 miles, the first 4 miles are very different than the last 4 miles. And if you decide I'm going to run 4 miles, take a break for whatever time, and then the next 4 miles are very different. And it's that compounding effect of losing her and then losing him that I really wasn't prepared for, and just was I think you can probably tell I'm still, I don't know that you do or don't get over it. I don't know what that means, but I don't know that I'm still fully through, especially the loss of Eli, where that was really, really hard. And I think there's, in terms of your question, the center point of your question, perseverance, it's a multifaceted thing. I do have a lot of joy. I really enjoy life. And when I say enjoy life, that sounds like I enjoy the circumstances that I get to participate in, which I do. But in general, I just love being alive. It's such a ride. And I think it's so interesting that you can have that two things can be true at the same time. You can have extreme joy and extreme grief at the same time. And that's so interesting to me. And I never would have known that could be the case until going through those things. And so you say, okay, what are maybe what are the pieces that add into that joy? And I think number one is got to be my faith. I've faith and Christ have been very important in my life for many, many, many years. And it's been not just important as in important to like, hey, I think about these things, but like as a daily discipline things that I do that are important, and spending quiet time and all that. So that's number one, is a perspective as a touchstone. I think additionally, family, boy, I don't know how I would have gotten through those periods. I'm like my parents, I mean, incredible support. And then met Pamela. We got married. We've been married a year now. Her, my little girl, Emmy, who's now 12, just all the friends around me, some of those same guys from the Sachi, the 6 group, some of those same guys, we still talk at least a couple of times a week. And so it's a combination of I think a vertical relationship with God, and then the horizontal relationships that allow for joy to be there. And something, Matt, that's become so important to me over time is solitude. I spend a fair amount of time, and so I've got a small farm, and so part of when I go feed cows, I used to always take my phone with me. Now I leave my phone here, and I walk to the tractor. I used to park it by the house. I don't anymore. And I walk, and it's time with it, and so much in my, so many things get sorted out, whether it's emotional things, mental things, problems at work, how do we go solve for this thing? Those things just kind of get sorted out when you're in solitude. And I think that's one of the things that when I watch like a lot of the people around me that don't have joy, or that are consistently struggling with the same thing, so much that is they don't give their brain a second to rest. And that's probably, edging out of my expertise area. But for me, it's been really, really important to find time to be alone. And it took a while to figure out how to really enjoy it. And I just enjoy that now. I love people, as you know, but I also love being alone and need that time.
Yeah. All right, couple easy questions, and
Yeah.
then thank you for sharing that, by the way.
Yeah.
And it's a lot to ask to share, something so personal in terms of tragedy. But I think that the message of perseverance and the source of your joy, I think it was really important. So I appreciate you sharing that so much. Couple questions I'd like to get through quickly, and this is from someone who's joining us, Brandon, who's joining us, and then I want to talk about kind of the world as you see it in terms of your day job. So first question is, what do you miss most about the farm? Well, you're on the farm. You don't miss anything. You're on the farm,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's Matt. It's if I can just sit there for a second. I do. I've got a farm, and I think one of the things that I've always when I was at Saatchi and at Mars, I was traveling a lot. I was all big markets. So like at Mars, oversaw the Chicago office and for a little bit of the New York office, that sort of thing. And same with Saatchi. And so I was always traveling in the big markets and enjoyed that. And I love big markets. I love small markets. I just, I think like my mother, it would be difficult to find a lot of situations where I can't figure out a way to have fun or just don't, have fun. But advertising, you're dealing in ideas and there's nothing tangible there. And for me, it was almost kind of easy to become ungrounded. And so I love advertising, I love marketing. But boy, having the farm and ground and watch life happen. I mean, I've got a few cows and they have babies and it's wonderful. And these babies are so cute and fuzzy and not cuddly because they don't like humans that much, but they're so sweet. And then sometimes bad things happen and it's really sad. And then like today, it's cold out there. And I got up this morning, I got up late this morning. I slept in until 7, which is pretty rare for me. And I got up and I spent my first hour and a half outside in the cold, just feeding horses and cow and but that commitment to knowing that it doesn't matter how bad I feel, it doesn't matter how crappy the weather is, I just have to go do these things. I think that's been important to me throughout life. My parents taught me that early on of there are things that you don't want to do and you have to do them anyway. And also there are things you can't do and you have to do those anyway too. And that's a hard lesson, but I think it's very fulfilling when you start realizing that it's true. So yeah, I've still got a farm, love the farm and it's for me, it's a source of great fun.
So you've mentioned Terry Turpin, you've mentioned David May, Andy Murray, Ken Barnett. The question is, who's had the most impact on your professional career and why? Again, this is a question from Brandon. Who's had the most impact on your professional career and why?
I think I need to start almost with a Sunday school answer on this that's very true, because I know this isn't the thing that Brandon's looking for, but really it's been my faith. It's been the perspective. I think perspective is one of the things that's so hard to gather in life, and to go back to tragedy, perspective is so important, and to know that today isn't all that matters. There is a perspective, and there are principles to live by. And for me, faith has provided perspective. It's provided a lot of principles, and I don't assume that I have it all figured out. But it's given me the principles that guide not just faith, but also career and family and all those things. And I think that's if you start with the right foundation, so much is possible. And I think that's that's the foundation for me. Now, in terms of humans who's been the most, who have I learned the most from? I mean, I honestly wouldn't know where to start. I think we've covered some pretty interesting base. One of my best friends in the entire world is a guy named David Etchigoyen. And I tell you what, I learn so much from him every day. Every time we talk, I learn something from him. And it isn't just knowledge, it's also wisdom. And it's such a refreshing look on absolutely every human has incredible value. And I think that's interesting in the world we live in, where there's so many people that, demonize other views or demonize, other socioeconomic or whatever. And to have people that you can look at and they just love everyone. I just think that's amazing. So much fun. And I think it's so important in what we do, because if you love everyone, all of a sudden you started a different foundation for being, in a service industry.
So a great quarterback hits the receiver not where they are, but knows where they're going to be and is able to hit them where they're going. So as the CEO of a company, talk about the world as you see it. Where are things, not so much where are things today, but where are things going, and how is your business kind of preparing for that next step or next several steps that we're going to be taking as shopping changes?
Yeah. One thing that I'm hoping we can help sort out at Webata, and then if I can, I'm just gonna break this down to two things. By the way, this would have been a great question for us to prep on before just hit me with it. So off the cuff.
You're welcome.
Oh yeah, right. So I'll hit one thing that is I hope we can help sort out, and I'll hit one thing that I think is going to be so fun and interesting to watch how it plays out. The one thing that I think we can help sort out at Webata is today in retail. So if we take the world and the world as we know it into retail, which is kind of is the space we operate in, we make so many decisions in silos. What's the right thing I need to do from a marketing perspective? What do I need to do from an e-com perspective? What do I need to do from a store perspective? What do I need to do from a supply chain perspective? There's so many silos, and we really don't have great tools that can add up and say, as a GM of a business, what are my next best actions? And I think what's really exciting about today is that the data and the data flows either exist or are close to existing to be able to pull a lot of that together and say, what really is my next best action? Where really do I need to focus? Where really do I need to spend money? And what happens when you're in silos, it's easy to demonize other thing. And I'll give you a great example is Walmart has a paid media at Walmart Connect where you can, sponsor search and that sort of thing. It's really, really easy to demonize. I don't want to spend any money with them. That money is, whatever. And whether or not they return great results, that's not for me, but it is for me to say, there's really a time and a place to spend money. We all know that in our life, but you want to know, not just when can I spend money, but when should I spend money? And I think that's the thing is right now, if you broke out the do's into three do's, what do I do? What can I do? And what should I do? I'm hoping that the data, and I know we can sort this out. We already sort this out in some areas, but not all. We get more and more of a complete picture of the what should I do? And that's really exciting to me. I think it's such an interesting time we live in where we do have data. We can aggregate a tremendous amounts of very disparate data, and we can analyze that data to give us indications of what to go do next. I think it's fascinating and exciting. It's also a little bit, it evens a playing field in so many ways where, maybe intuition will, I think, still make a huge delta, but that delta may not be as deep seated. And so that intuition, it gets to be layered on top of better decision-making support. So I think that's one thing, and where the world's going is that ability to aggregate and to understand your decisions across a much broader, and if you're a general manager, really understand from a holistic standpoint, what are the better decisions I need to make. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun and bring with it a lot more interesting challenges, because we're all, if some of these things are sorted out for us, we all need the next challenge. What's the next wave to break into? I think the thing that I'm so interested in how we sort out is, how do we shop for wants? We're starting to sort out how we shop for needs. And if you break the things around you and the things that you consume and the things that you buy, you can roughly break them down the middle into needs and wants. And the needs have been so incredibly held on a pedestal maybe over the last few years. And I really don't want to go to a parking lot, fight a crowd, go to the back of the store and get a gallon of milk. I just need a gallon of milk. And so we've been sorting out how to get needs and shrink the supply chain and shrink frustration and tension and just get the needs done. And at some point, you can see it in the future where we get the needs auto-filled in our refrigerator. There's been a lot of press over that, where I'm down to a quarter gallon of milk and all of a sudden it's bam, there's somebody with it in my refrigerator. So we're getting the needs sorted out, but the wants where you really want that experience, where you want to explore, where you really care deeply about that category and you just enjoy learning about it. And I don't think we've seen quite the revolution yet in how we shop, experience, enjoy the wants. And so I think that's as we get the needs, that tends to run in a bit of a swinging pendulum. We'll focus on needs for a little bit, focus on wants. I don't know if you remember, Matt. Well, of course you will. You're old, maybe not as old as me, but old like me. You'll remember like the experience stores were all the rage. And that's when Apple first started opening stores, right? And then we pendulum back. And so I'm really curious to see how this next pendulum swing over to the wants goes. I think that's going to be a ton of fun and something that being able to make better decisions and is going to be paramount, because it used to be that always those wants, they don't make money. How you shop for one, when you really express the wants, they don't make a lot of money. And I think we're going to have the underpinning to be able to make shopping for wants very profitable and very enjoyable for all of us. So it's a couple of top of the mind thoughts.
Yeah. Such an exciting time to be alive. Certainly an exciting time to be working in this industry. I mean, just seems like the change is just accelerating faster and faster and faster every day. I appreciate you so much, you making time to visit with us for an hour this afternoon. I want to be really respectful of your time. Just give one last thing. If folks want to reach out to someone on your team and learn more about your capabilities and what Webata can do to help them grow their business, what's the best way to engage your business?
Email experts@webata.com.
Experts@webata.com. All right, Gabe Wight, co-founder and team lead at Webata. Thank you again so much for making this time. I've got 2 pages of notes that I've scribbled as we've talked. I've learned tons about you, and you're a real inspiration in a lot of ways. And just can't tell you how much the relationship that we have had over the years, how much it's meant to me. And it's been fun getting to know you better. So thank you so much.
So same here, Matt. Thank you. Have a good day.